Christian Zionists are it's a relatively new term. Obviously, Christians were not aware of this phenomena until maybe in the last 100 years the term was even there. I am a Christian. I grew up in Lebanon, Tennessee. I had not met a religious Jewish person, male or female, until I came to Israel in 2004. I am certainly not an expert on Judaism, but I do know quite a bit about Christianity. And I have learned a lot about our relationship in Christianity with the Jewish people. I grew up in a typical Christian atmosphere. Looking back, it would seem to me now very odd. The reality is that we had a Bible that spoke about Israel incessantly, spoke about Jerusalem incessantly. Almost every page was mentioning something about Jerusalem, something about Israel. But as I think back on the time that I spent in church, in Sunday school, we never talked about Israel. It was just never part of the curriculum. It was never part of the subject. And which I would think to most Jewish people would seem odd, since we were carrying around a Bible that was obviously full of that subject. Even the Christian portion of that Bible that I had talked about Israel, talked about Jerusalem. But it wasn't part of part of our discussion. It wasn't part of the teaching or the preaching that was going on. And so the idea of Christian Zionists was totally not on my radar. We ended up later being introduced and then actually asking some questions about, why this was like it was. Why was there so much mention of this physical Israel, but yet we were not talking about it? Obviously, 1948 had happened in my lifetime. 1967 had happened in my lifetime. And so we were still avoiding the elephant in the room, let's call it. It was later in 2004 that I was invited to come to Israel. I was at the time farming in Tennessee, and I was invited to come to here by happenstance, and I've learned that in the Jewish community there's no such thing as coincidence with God. And I was invited. They said, "Oh, you're a farmer." I know a farmer. I know a farmer in Har Bracha, in the Mount of Blessing. He's growing a vineyard there. You're going to love him. I said, "Great, let's go." Within a few days, I found myself on the Mount of Blessing. I had no idea what the West Bank was, or I had really any idea about Judea and Samaria and the significance of that. And I met a man named Nir Levi. Nir Levi owned the vineyard there, which was about maybe 8 rows of vines, probably maybe at the most 75 yards long. And I went, wow, this is amazing. He then, as we were standing there, pulled out his Bible, a Tanakh, and he opened the pages up to Jeremiah 31. He prefaced it by saying, "This is the dream of Jeremiah. This is the dream that he had, that one day, when the restoration of Israel would happen, when the redemption was beginning, that we would see vineyards on this mountain again, in the mountains of Samaria." And I was standing there. I was in that place. I was standing in the place that Jeremiah had hoped would be revived. And I remember looking at Nir and I went, "Oh my gosh. This didn't happen in Rocky Valley Baptist Church. We never had an experience like that." I was looking at the vineyards that Jeremiah dreamed about, not existing for 2,000 years. Rocks. Nobody was looking at this piece of land saying, "Oh, wow, what a great place to plant a vineyard." You see, the Jews would look at the land and the prophecy specifically, and say, "This is our to-do list." Christians never look at prophecy as a to-do list. We look at prophecy and we wait for it to happen. And here, after all these years, coming here some 13 years ago, I saw it with my own eyes. And I asked Nir a question. I said, what can I do? How can I be a part of this? And that question, 13 years later, has brought thousands of people, thousands of volunteers to experience the same thing that I experienced. And I'm overwhelmed with that. It's an amazing thing to think about Christians understanding the reality, stepping out of some kind of replacement theology, and then understanding that this is a new reality for us. Is this something positive that could happen in the Christian community? Of course it is. Of course it is. How could anybody see this as some negative thing? How can anybody see this that, oh no, now we have to lay down this something that we can't touch and replace it with something that we can touch? So this is an awakening to me. I can tell you, and I can speak to most Christians that are even watching this right now, that most of us didn't have preachers, or it wasn't also a part of our curriculum to hear about Christian history. The historical narrative that we were responsible for was not such a good story. And I didn't know that story. I didn't know it. I had little glimpses of it, but I didn't know it until I came to Israel and I started talking to my Jewish friends. And I began to understand that there's a wound here, a huge wound. And I think as we begin to develop this relationship, a cooperative relationship, it's important, as in any relationship, to make sure that the relationship is strong. Just like a marriage relationship, just like any relationship, a family relationship, to make sure that there's no issue between us. And most Christians, unfortunately, come to Israel, they don't realize that there is still this issue. Even now, we have Jewish organizations that are working with Christian organizations and seeing, and there is this new rise in Christian understanding of Israel. Israel is more than just a rabbit's foot. It's more than just the talk that we would give that says that if you bless Israel, you'll be blessed. It's deeper than that. Because what I'm understanding right now is that we have to understand that there's something happening. There's some place that we're inching towards that the whole earth needs to be involved in. And it's not about me blessing Israel and then prospering in Missouri or Tennessee. It's about me being engaged in what's happening with the whole earth as it's seen through and what will happen through Israel. The prophet Isaiah talks about that the temple being a house of prayer for all nations. And how does that make us feel as Christians? What does this mean? It will be a house of prayer for all nations. And even in our faith, Jesus quoted Isaiah in saying this place will be a house of prayer for all nations. So what's our response? What's our response as Christians? Maybe Isaiah was wrong. Maybe eventually it wasn't going to be. Maybe it was just a dream that was never going to be fulfilled. And I don't believe that. I believe that we have the greatest opportunity right now that we've ever had in the history of the world to come together. This is the Jewish vision. This is the Jewish purpose, the nation of Israel bringing the world together. In order for us to be involved in this reconciliation, in this place of creating Jerusalem, of understanding Jerusalem and its purpose for the whole world and uniting the whole world and becoming the epicenter, where the place where we come together and worship God. It's critical. It's critical for us to correct. It's critical for us as Christians to make sure that we're right with the people that God chose. Replacement theology stole this from us. Replacement theology took away from us this opportunity for the whole world to come together. But now we have our greatest opportunity. Now the Jews have returned. They've returned to the mountains of Israel. I've been fortunate to work in these mountains. These are the places that where Abraham, his feet tread. And God specifically told him that the children of Israel, the children of Abraham, that his descendants would inherit this place. And we get to be a part of that, or we can be a part of it. There is a place for the nations. There's a place for the nations to come and to join this Jewish effort. There's a place of servitude. The prophet Isaiah, in Isaiah 61, says that the foreigners will come and be your vine dressers and your plowmen. And Hayuvel, our organization, has been able to see that reality. It's a beautiful reality. It's a place of coming here, not pushing some doctrinal statement on the nation, but to come here and accept the reality and the move of God. This is our place. This is our time. This is our opportunity. We have to walk in that place. It's time for us to do the right thing. It's time for us to be a part of the narrative, not in opposition to what God's doing any longer. Thank you, Avi, for letting me be here.